Hello, my name is Damon Lembi, and I'm the CEO of Learn It. I hope you enjoy your Managing Up class. If you do, please like and subscribe my channel. Enjoy your class.
Hi, welcome to Managing Up in a Hybrid Workplace. My name is James Jeffley. You know, life has thrown some curveballs at us the last couple of years, hasn't it? We used to go to the office and see everybody and work in our office or cubicle or manufacturing environment, and work was where we did a thing. There was a place we did work at that place. Then when we're done, we'd go home and we would do home things at home. When COVID showed up on the scene in 2020, many people, not all, had to go to home. We had to stay home and work from there because it was really the only safe place. This was all before vaccines and boosters. And we figured it out. We got comfortable with working from home. Many people figured out a routine, they figured out the technology. Yes, it was not without its challenges, and we figured it out. Fast forward to today, and many organizations are feeling the need to want to bring people back in the workplace and do that safely and mindfully. And so they're experimenting with the hybrid workplace. Some days in the office, some days at home, because there are distinct advantages to working from home. So that has created its own set of challenges. Well, okay, how do you manage relationships and communication and visibility and all of that when you're splitting time in this new working world? So that's what we'll explore today. In particular, we'll talk about how do you manage up? How do you manage the relationship with your manager in this hybrid reality? So today we're going to take a look at 4 topics. We'll take a look at 3 keys to managing up in this new reality. We'll talk about the hybrid impact and what it's had on managing up. We'll also talk about the ABCs of meeting to manage up. So when you meet with your manager, what are some things you need to keep in mind? We've reduced that down to an ABC. And then the final thing will be knowing the ropes. We like acronyms, right? So knowing the ropes for meeting with your manager. So that's what we'll cover in our time together. Normally, this is an in-person class. And during that class, there would be interaction, questions, breakout sessions, a lot of group discussion. Since you're just watching the video, it's up to you. So what I would encourage you to do is get something to write with, take some notes, pause the video, think about what was shared, jot down some notes, play the video, and pick up with the content. And go back and watch this as many times as you need to, because in reviewing this again, you might pick up some things that you didn't hear the first time around. Before we dive into the content, a little bit about me. I'm James Jeffley. I've taught a lot of things around the world the last 200 years, or some days it feels like it. And I have had my share of experiences in the work world. I've been a people manager. I've managed individuals. I've also managed teams. I've had my own businesses, and I've managed employees and contractors. I've also been an individual contributor, and there are times that I think I've actually managed up pretty successfully with some managers, and some managers not so much. So I'll share some things from my experience too. First, I want to start with a basic assessment on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 meaning woohoo, yay, amazing, outstanding, 0 meaning not so much. How happy are you with your relationship with your manager? Take a moment, think about it, jot that down. How happy are you with your relationship with your manager? 0 to 10. Don't overthink this. Your first guess is probably right. Now, what's one positive aspect of your relationship with your manager? If you look at that relationship, you would think, yeah, we collaborate really well together, or they make time for me to ask questions or to have regular meetings. So it's one positive aspect of your relationship with your manager. And if you don't have a manager right now, think about the last manager that you've had. Second question is, what's one aspect of that relationship you'd like to improve? What would you like to improve in your relationship with your manager? So what's working well? What would you like to improve? 0 to 10, how happy are you? Hang on to that information because we'll come back to it a little later. Managing up is really about managing your relationship, your contribution, your impact, what you create together with your manager. And it takes two to make this work. So you could learn all of these wonderful things and go back to a manager that really blah, 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 has no interest in it. You can't force people to accept new ideas or to adopt a new management style or even a new personality. Some of this may not work with your manager or your next manager. Understand that you only have three options for dealing with any kind of difficult situation. You can confront and ask for what you want. You can cope, learn to accept it, or you can leave. You may have to try all of those on if none of this works with your manager. The other thing I would say to you is that this is not a microwave. You can apply some of these things and expect you're going to get an immediate positive outcome. Not always the case. Relationships are built over time and through experience. And so while what I'm sharing with you today may work with your manager, it may also take some time, and try to level set expectations here. All right, let me share with you my 3 keys to managing up. If you really want to manage up, try these things at a minimum. Number 1, connect. Find a way to connect with your manager beyond the weekly status meetings or the one-on-one about business and your to-do list. What do you all have in common? What shared interests do you have? What goals or values do you have? School, sports, family. What are your shared interests? Where can you connect? Because if the more points of connection you have, the more opportunities you have to build a more stable relationship with them. So look for points of connection. I know some of you might be thinking, well, James, I don't want them to be my BFF. I'm not going to be best friends forever with them. That's not the point. You are in relationship with people at work. You spend more time interacting with them maybe than with your own families. Now, that was usually true when you were in the office, not so much these days, especially if you're working remotely or in a hybrid situation. Be that as it may, you are still in relationship. And this person could have a significant impact on your career development. So you want to work at building a healthy relationship. So find ways to connect with each other. Number 2, communicate with your manager frequently. I recommend that you meet with your manager at least once a week to go over the X's and the O's, the to-do list, the priorities, the things that are important to get done. But also to communicate with each other about life and what's going on in your lives. Share interesting ideas. If you like to read books, if you have insights, you've read articles, or you've taken classes. What are you reading these days? What are you learning? Share those ideas with your manager as well. The last one is care. Care about their well-being. Care about who they are as a human being. Ask them to delegate things to you to lighten their load. This could also provide growth opportunities for you. So check in on them. See how they're doing as a human being. See if they need anything. Think about any positive, healthy relationship you have in your life, whether it's a professional relationship with someone at work or it's a personal relationship. Are those 3 things present? Connection, communication, and caring? If those relationships are positive, if they are supportive and nurturing, if they're working for you, those are key elements of them. So look at incorporating them with your manager. Now, this is ultimately about one thing. It's about relationships, as I said. In a live class with me, we would do a breakout with the group right now, and I would ask you to consider these things and go talk to one of your colleagues about this. I'm going to ask you to think about this right now. Jot down your thoughts, your answers to these 3 questions. Number 1, what does managing up mean to you? When you think of, managing up, what does that look like? What does it mean? What would you be doing if you were managing up? 2, what's the best example of managing up that you've seen either in this workplace or someplace you worked before? What's the best example of managing up you've seen? And then lastly, what's one thing you'd like to improve in your relationship with your manager? If you're a 7 now or an 8, what would 8 or 9 look like? What's one thing you would like to improve in your relationship with your manager? So take a moment, think about those things, pause the playback, reflect, write down your answers. And when you're ready, come back and we'll continue. All right, welcome back. I hope you've had a chance to think about what managing up means to you. What does that look like? What's the best example of that you've seen so far? And what's one thing you'd like to improve in your relationship with your manager? I have managed some managers pretty well. I think I've done a pretty good job of managing up in some situations, but in order to do that, I had to work on building a relationship with people. Is managing up important? Yeah, absolutely. There's an organization called McKinsey and Company. They are a consulting firm. They also do a lot of research. They did a study in 2017 where they said senior executives should pay more attention to managing up and horizontally versus managing down. Now, don't misunderstand. They're not saying that managing down, managing your direct reports, you should stop that. Absolutely not. You should continue to manage your direct report relationships. But often what happens is we get so narrowly focused on supporting the people that report to us that we forget about the people at our level and the people above us. You need to nurture all the relationships in your workplace 360 degrees, not just in one direction. According to their study, they say it's 50% more important than managing subordinates. Managing at your level and up, 50% more important than managing subordinates, especially if you are career-minded and you hope to be promoted one day. What does managing up have to do with getting promoted? Well, when those senior leaders have conversations amongst themselves, and they do, about whom to promote to the senior manager position or director position or senior director or VP, they're talking with each other, right? And they're looking around going, okay, who would be a good person to put in this position? You want your name to come out of one of their mouths or several of their mouths. You want to be considered in that conversation. How can you ensure that happens? By managing up, by working on having good relationships, not just with your manager, but with other managers, other senior leaders in your organization. And the McKinsey study said it's 2 times more important for your career success than managing down. Now, notable data points, they talked to 1,000 senior marketing executives in 71 different countries. There were 96 different variables that were considered and almost a little over 67,000 individual evaluations for comparison. So this wasn't a, let me ask 3 people situation, right? So managing up, what is that? Well, the definition we're using is from Kimberly Cummings, and she is a leadership expert and coach. And she says managing up is the process of positioning yourself in the workplace with your leader. Not necessarily subordinate to your leader or better than your leader, but with your leader as an ally, as a trusted advisor. She says managing up is more about your relationship with your manager and advocating for yourself to showcase your work, position yourself to others for mobility, etc. It's not about overly asserting yourself or being, bossy. I'm the boss. No. It's about proactively managing conversations to add value in your role, to show that you are adding value in a way that your manager understands and needs. That's really what managing up is about. So why do it? Why manage up? Why is that important? Well, if you do it well, managing up makes your manager's life and your own life, their job and your job, easier. It can help make your team's experience of work easier. Which leads to the kind of success outlined in the McKinsey report that gets you considered for promotions and other choice opportunities. But understanding the best way to communicate with your boss, demonstrating that you care, meeting performance objectives and goals and more won't go unnoticed if you're doing these sorts of things. Managing up can be especially important with a newly hired manager. They've come in and they're trying to get their own stable foundation established and figure out who they can trust. or when you change teams and now you're working with a different group of people and a different manager. Demonstrating these kinds of positive managing up behaviors can go a long way towards providing stability and starting your relationship off on the right foot. Managing up with a long-time boss or manager can also help you renew your relationship, because maybe you've gotten stuck in a rut. Maybe there's some things that you're doing that have become a little, let's say, dysfunctional. And so this is an opportunity to do a reset on your relationship, call out those things that aren't working, and come up with some strategies to address those things and maybe even fix them. Talk through communication challenges, talk through, challenges with executing on the goals and priorities, and talk about how you like to be managed and what your manager wants more of or less of from you. So those are some good reasons for managing up. Now, if you really want to manage up, there are lots of things you can do. I mentioned earlier about connect, communicate, and care. Here are 3 more keys to managing up. And preparation is essential. This is not a thing that you just sort of walk in and, I'm just going to wing this. No. You really have to be mindful and intentional about how you do this. So I'm going to mention them, and then I'll go through with some specific suggestions for each. So number 1, you got to know your manager. You can't have this, arm's length relationship with your manager where you don't know them, what's important to them, their values, what they care about. You've got to get to know your manager. Number 2, you've got to do your own job and you've got to deliver value. It's easier to manage up if you're really good, if you're competent, if they see, oh, wow, you are excellent at your job, right? That builds a foundation of trust, where they go, okay, I trust this person to be competent. Competence is a trust currency. The third thing is you've got to be able to view things through your manager's eyes, see what they see, understand what their challenges and priorities are. So let's dig a little deeper in each of these. Know your manager. What does that really mean? Well, think about these things. Number 1, what kind of culture does your manager create? Do they create the kind of culture where they're open to new ideas and suggestions and feedback from you or from the group? Are they more of a consensus builder, more democratic in their leadership style and culture, or are they more authoritarian where they say, I'm the boss and do this, and they expect you to do that? What's the kind of culture that they create? Is it more collaborative? Do they encourage challenge and listen to diverse ideas, or are they not open? What would you say your manager's strengths are, and what would you say your manager needs to develop? You did this for yourself earlier. What about your manager? What are they good at, and what do you think they need to improve? Not that you walk in there and go, I think you need to improve the following. I have a list. No. These are conversations that you bring up tactfully and respectfully over time. And then, speaking of communication, how do they communicate with you and others? Are they very direct and bottom line focused in their communication? Or are they very detailed and analytical in their communication? Do they ask a lot of questions? Or are they more, big picture thinkers? And are they kind of looking over here, go, well, I think it looks like this to me. Big on ideas, short on details. So what is their communication style? How do you communicate with each other? And how often do you communicate? We'll talk more about that in a bit. What does your manager think about? What are their goals? What are their values? Let me tell you how to assess this. Values are those key things that we really care about. They're sort of like light posts for our lives. And if we live in alignment with those values, then we stay away from the rocky shores of disappointment. When you think about values, you think about things like honesty, integrity, beauty, autonomy, choice. You think about creativity, right? You think about humor, laughter, connection, family. There are millions and millions of values. What are your top 3? Take a moment, pause the video. What are your top 3 values? Write them down. I'll be here. Welcome back. You have them? Your top 3 values? Or was that a little challenging? Like, nobody's ever asked me that question. What are my top 3 values? Here's one way to figure out what one of your top values is, if not the highest value. Is there something that really ticks you off? Something that makes you go from 0 to angry in a heartbeat? What is that? Is it when people are dishonest with you? Does that get you upset? Or is it when people don't listen to you? Does that make you upset? Or is it when people don't follow through on their commitments? Or could it be when, I don't know, people aren't open to your ideas? What is it? What really upsets you? Take a moment, write that down. What really upsets you? Now, take that idea and flip it around 180 degrees. And whatever the thing is that upsets you, the 180 degree opposite of that is probably one of your highest values. For example, if you said, oh, the thing that really upsets me is when people aren't honest. Okay, flip that around 180 degrees. What's the opposite of when people aren't honest? Honesty. So honesty is probably one of, if not the highest value for you. If you said, oh, the thing that really upsets me is when people don't listen. Okay, flip it around. What's the highest value? Is it listening or is it respect? Whatever that is, it's one of your highest values. So that's one way to figure out what your highest values are. So why do values matter? They matter because we take our values with us no matter where we go. My values don't change based on my geography. So if I value honesty at home, I value honesty at work. If I value creativity at home, I value creativity at work. And so if my manager isn't being honest with me or giving me the chance to be creative or whatever my value is, now I take that personally because values are personal. So if you know what your values are and you know what your manager's values are, then you can either build a stronger foundation or you can avoid minefields when you step on one of their values that you didn't know they had. How do I find out what their values are? Ask them. Hey, boss, I was in a class the other day. I was watching a video and the person said, hey, what are your top 3 values? And I had to think about that. And mine are, and then you list them. Oh, that's fascinating. And then you can ask them, what are yours? Now, they may have to take a few minutes and think about it, but when they tell you, write those down because those are important to them. If they tell you, hey, I value people who listen well, then don't interrupt them. Don't cut off their sentences. Don't finish their sentences for them. Listen, be a good listener for them. Is this making sense? I hope so. What are their goals? What do they need to achieve? What is their manager holding them accountable for? And is there anything you can do to help them achieve those goals? What are their priorities? Many people work in organizations where things are constantly moving. Things are shifting. Things are fluid, right? So Monday, the priority was X. Next Monday, it's Z. We skipped past Y. We just went straight to Z. Or maybe by Tuesday, the priorities have changed. So it's important to have regular meetings with your manager to find out what's the priority today. And just a side note about priorities. If you have a to-do list, and let's say you've got 10 items on your to-do list. Some of you think that's an easy day, right? But let's say you've got 10 items on your to-do list. Pop quiz. How many of those 10 items on your to-do list can be a priority? 10 items, they're all important, but which ones, how many can be a priority? Many people say 2, 3, tops, 1. One item on that 10 item to-do list can be a priority, only one item. All 10 are important. But if you think you've got 2, 3, 4 priorities, you don't understand the definition of priority. Priority means something that comes before everything else. They're all important. If you had to pick one, the one that would have the biggest impact, that's the priority. What are your boss's priorities? You may not know. You may know what your priorities are or their priorities for you, but you may not know what their manager's priorities are for them. Have that conversation. See where you can align and help them achieve their priorities. Now you become more valuable. What's keeping them up at night? There's a lot going on in the world right now. Don't turn on the news because it'll depress you. But if you have, you know there's a lot going on in the world right now. So what's keeping your manager up at night? What are they worried about? Is it a major project? Is it a deadline? Is it achieving a certain KPI or other metric? Is it turnover? Is it hiring the right new staff person to join your team? What is it that they worry about? Ask your manager that question. Hey, what keeps you up at night? And is there anything you can do to help with that? Is there anything you can do to lighten that burden for them? Maybe you can help them strategize or brainstorm something. Maybe they can use you as a sounding board, right? Not that you have to have the answer, but sometimes it's a good idea to just bounce ideas off of people and then you figure things out. What do they want more of or less of from you? Remember I asked you at the beginning of this, 0 to 10, how happy are you with your relationship with your manager? Ask your manager the same question. Hey, manager, 0 to 10, 0 meaning 10 meaning woohoo. How happy are you with our working relationship? How happy are you with me? See what they say. What's one positive aspect about me? What's one thing you think I could improve? What's a growth opportunity for me? We need to have this feedback. We need to have this conversation more than just the once or twice a year conversation around performance evaluation time. We need to be having a regular conversation about feedback and how we're doing, where we can course correct. If you're waiting 180 or 365 days to course correct, to give feedback, you're missing out on some opportunities and you're not setting people up for success. So what do they want more of or less of from you? And then make a plan and start doing that. So that's the first key to managing up. It's knowing your manager. Here's the second one. Do your job and deliver value. So what is the primary objective for your role? Are there any metrics that you have to hit, any targets that you have to hit? So what are those? And are you on track to achieve those goals? What can you do to deliver value on that objective independently? Because your manager doesn't want to feel like they have to handhold you. So they're looking for a certain amount of initiative on your part. So how can you deliver value on those goals and priorities? And the third thing is, what strengths of your managers can you leverage in order to deliver value? Maybe your manager is a good consensus builder, and so you need them to help build consensus with other managers on different teams, cross-functional teams. Maybe your manager is a good negotiator, and so maybe you need to leverage their skills in negotiating something, right? The third thing is see things through their eyes. What is the company's strategy and how does your manager fit into that? What are the company's goals and priorities and how does your manager fit into that? What are the pressures or risks or pain points that your manager is experiencing right now? And how could you help shoulder some of that burden for them, take some of that pain away from them? How can you address those things using your current role and what you know and your capabilities and resources? How can you make life easier for your manager? What can you do to make your manager look good? Those are all important attributes, aspects of managing up. Think about this. If you were the manager and you had you as a direct report, what would you want? Would you want to be able to delegate more responsibilities to you, to that person? What would you want your direct report to do to make your life a little easier? Go ask your manager that question. Hey, manager, is there anything I can do to make your life easier? And see what they say. Now, if they know you, like you, and trust you, and you've done the second thing, which was to do your job and add value, they might say, thank you for asking. Let's see here. I think it would be really helpful if you could take part of this responsibility. Or I would like to delegate this whole thing to you, whatever that is. Maybe it's a reporter running a meeting or whatever it is, right? It's something that takes up time and energy on their plate, and there's probably a better use for their time and energy. And maybe that would be a good growth opportunity for you. So this could be a win-win. So go have that conversation. So those are the 3 keys to managing up. Know your manager, do your job and deliver value, and view things through their eyes. And again, you can pause this video, take a screenshot of that, jot down some notes, come back and continue. Which of those do you think would be a great place for you to start? Getting to know your manager a little better? Focus on doing your job at a higher level? Or viewing things through their eyes? Take some pressure off of their shoulders. Which one of those do you think would be a good place for you to start? Which of those would have the biggest impact? Do that first. Recognize what you're already doing. Write down at least 2 actions that you will take to implement with your manager. In which of these areas? Now, let's talk about social styles. Have you taken a personality test before? Maybe Myers-Briggs or DISC or Inc. There are a lot of them out there. Did you pass? I'm sorry. We have the results. We were not able to detect a personality in you. I'm teasing. I don't think they found one in me. No, there's a personality there. Whether you've taken any of the ones that I've mentioned or any other personality or social style assessments, they all try to do the same things. They try to understand what motivates you, what makes you tick, and then they stick you in a box and they give you a label and they say, this is you. And there's usually some truth in that. Here's the fundamental truth that I think is there in all of them. However many social styles or personality styles they say there are, we're all of them. It's just that we tend to live in one of those boxes most of the time. On occasion, we pop over into a different box, depending on who we're with, what we're doing, or what the situation requires. For most of us, there's a dominant or primary social style or personality style box, and then there's our secondary box. See if this makes sense for you as I go through this. This is a social styles model, and so here's how you make the determination. You make 2 observations. First observation: Am I more task oriented? Is this what I feel more drawn to? I'm a task person. Yeah, I have to work with people, but I'd rather have my to-do list and just work through that and get things done. Is that you? Are you a task person? Or are you more of a people person? Yeah, I've got a to-do list. I have to get things done, but I really like doing things with people. I like working with people, talking with people, collaborating with people. Are you really more of a people person? Yeah, you have to do tasks, but which one of those sounds more true for you? Tasks or people? Jot that down. Here's the second observation, and this will unlock what your primary social style is. Would you say you're more of an outgoing extrovert? Yeah, I like being out, I like being in the front, I like being in the spotlight, I like leading. Or would you say, no, I'm more quiet, I'm more behind the scenes, I'm more of an introvert. I still get things done, but I do it quietly. I don't need to be the grand marshal of the parade. I don't need a spotlight. I'm just going to quietly work over here and get my things done. Does that sound like you? Introvert, extrovert. So depending on which combination you chose, task or people, introvert or extrovert, you will fit into one of these 4 social style boxes. So let's say you chose task and extrovert. That would put you firmly in the driver box. What does it mean to be a driver social style or a driver personality? It means you like to get things done. You are a bottom line, no muss, no fuss, no extra fluff. Just tell me what to do and when to do it, and you go get it done. Get it done. That is your bottom line motivation. Conversations with drivers are usually short and to the point, not a lot of fluff there. They can be polite, but hey, how's it going? Great. So what we need to do today is, they just kind of gloss past all that relationship building stuff. Is that you? Is that your manager? Think about both of these as we go through this. If you're not that one, maybe you're task focused, but the behind the scenes version, the quieter version. If so, this would put you in the analytical box. And what do we know about analyticals? They love data. Analyticals love some data. They also love being right. So you can't just have flimsy data, right? You've got to have correct data, verifiable data, true facts. Analyticals like structure, order, process. Things need to go in order. If you're a Star Trek fan, think Mr. Spock. Logical. If you're a Star Trek fan and you're thinking driver, that's Captain Kirk. Spock, we've got to get things done. That would be illogical to act without proper analysis first, Captain. If you're a Star Trek fan, this is making a lot of sense. It might even be funny. So are you that person, the analytical? How do you know you're dealing with an analytical? They send you an email with 11 bullet points in it. They ask you 20 questions. Conversations with them usually take longer, right? That's an analytical. Analyticals are great people. If you want to understand things in detail, you need an analytical on your team. Is that you? Is that your manager? Can you see the possible conflict here? If one of you is a driver and one of you is an analytical, the driver just wants the bottom line communication. The analytical is going to want to go deeper. Oh, so what do? You don't try to change the other person. That's what you don't do. You try to recognize who you're in the presence of and be more like them. Oh, I'm a driver. I can't be an analytical. Sure you can. You ever had to balance your checkbook or figure out some complex problem? Yeah, you've popped into analytical mode when you had to. Well, I'm a driver. I need to understand things at a detailed level. I just can't, bottom line it. Yeah, you can. Especially when you're stressed out. You've had to make quick decisions before. You know how to do it. You pop the fence and you be the other one. It's what's required in the moment. That's task people. People, let's pop down below the line here. If you said you're an introvert and a people person, you're an amiable. And amiables are wonderful people. These are the folks that want to make sure everyone's included. These are the folks that prioritize relationships. They honestly care about how you're doing. If they say, hey, how are you? They really want to know. The driver might just do that as, social, it's just a social nicety. How you doing? Okay, great. Let's talk about the project. The amiable will wait for the answer. How are you? And they'll want to know. Well, I'm doing okay. The weekend was a little tough, but, very hot. And okay. The amiable will have that conversation with you before they jump into the business conversation. Not always, but usually. Amiables are some of the nicest people you'll ever want to meet. They'll bend over backwards. They'll come in early. They'll stay late. They'll help you out with things. Sometimes too much. There's a word that many amiables have a hard time saying. You know what the word is. Write it down. What's the one word that many amiables have a hard time saying? Pause the video, write it down. Okay, now that you're back, what's that word? Is it no? Is that what you wrote? Yeah, you're right. Amiable much? Maybe you are an amiable. And part of the reason why many amiables have a hard time saying no is because they're people pleasers. They want to serve. They want to be of service, right? They want to please others. And saying no to people might mean that folks might not like them. But here's the challenge with amiables. Sometimes you got to say no. You can't say yes to everyone. You can, but if you do, your plate becomes so full that, now it's unmanageable. And you increase the likelihood you're going to upset someone because you promised something that you couldn't deliver. Sound familiar? Is that you? Sometimes if you have an amiable manager, they have a hard time making a decision because if they made a decision, if they picked A, then the people who picked B may not like them and vice versa. Oh, can we have both? No, we got to pick one. Oh, how about C? No, we got to pick A or B. It's not always that bad, but you've met an amiable before. The last one is the extrovert who is people focused. And this is the expressive. Oh, that's my tribe, right? Woohoo, go expressives. Hey, expressives are sort of the big picture people. They're the ones when, if you ask them a question, they may not come right out with an answer. They might do something like this, where they turn to the side and they look up and they start thinking, what does that look like to me? What does that feel like or sound like? They'll usually answer this in terms of emotions. What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? They'll just be looking up here because they're big picture people. They're big idea people, right? If you want to come up with a big idea for something, talk to an expressive. If you want to come up with a creative, fun idea for something, talk to an expressive. If you want to get something done, you're going to need a driver to follow through on that. If you want to get it done right, you're going to need an analytical to plan that. And if you want to make sure you don't leave something out, you're going to need an amiable. Expressives are wonderful people. For them, they like to get things done with fun and variety. They may not always follow a logical order or process. This is sometimes maddening to analyticals. Why aren't you going in order? Because that's not how expressives work. They're going to start over here and, oh, squirrel. And then go look at something that's much more interesting to them. But can you imagine running a team with only drivers? One bus and everybody wants to drive. Can you imagine running a team with only analyticals? You'd be paralyzed from the analysis. Or only amiables. Good luck making a decision. Or only expressives. It'll be fun. It'll be a fun team, but you probably won't get much done either. We need all of these personalities to be in the room. We need all of these personalities to contribute and to collaborate, because that is when you get things done. As I'm describing these, how many of you are thinking, you know what? I'm actually all of these. I find, there are times when I'm just focused on getting things done like a driver. There are times when I've got my head buried in a spreadsheet or a chart or some analysis. There are times when I do care about the relationship and other people. And there are times when I, have a big idea and I may not always follow things in a logical process. If that's you, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. It just means that you kind of operate here in the middle. Sometimes you're over here, sometimes you're over there. Sometimes you're down here, sometimes you're down there. It just depends. This is where I try to operate from, is right there. And when I'm working with an analytical, I expect that conversation to take a little longer. And so I prepare. I know they're going to ask me questions. I need to know the answers before I go to that meeting. If I'm going with a driver, having a meeting with them, okay, I need to be succinct. I need to sum things up for them, because that's really all the bandwidth they have time for. If I'm with an amiable, I need to put on my best people hat and focus on being polite and professional and be a good listener. Be a good listener with all of them. Be polite and professional with all of them. But I need to dial that up an extra notch with amiables. I need to come across as non-threatening. And if I'm hanging out with expressives, then I just got to go with the flow and rein them in a little bit where necessary, but go with the flow, because that's what's important to expressives. Again, we're not just one of these. We're one of these most of the time, but on occasion we pop over or up or down or across into one of the other boxes. So take a moment and think about this. Which one are you most of the time? Driver, analytical, amiable, expressive? Which one is your manager most of the time? Are you two in the same box, or are you in different boxes? Are you both on the task side of things or people? Are you both on the extroverted side of things or introverted? This can give you some insight into how to better manage your communication with each other. Think of these social styles like gears in a car. You don't just drive in first gear all the time, right? Based on the road conditions, traffic, etc., you need to shift gears. Sometimes you need to go in reverse. You need to shift gears based on where you're driving and what's appropriate. It's the same thing with these personalities. If I'm over here in driver land, but my boss is analytical, you know what? You need to shift gears to be more analytical when you're dealing with your manager. Unless they're being driver-like in the moment because they're under stress and pressure. And so then they've popped over to they've shifted gears to your side of things. Or maybe you have to deal with some of these people and you're an analytical and you have to talk to an expressive. Oh my gosh, the bane of your existence. Okay, but expressives are fun. There may even be cookies involved. Be careful, we're still in a pandemic. But you understand what I'm saying, right? Don't expect them to be go on a logical, orderly process, right? You may have to provide some structure for that meeting. So, what social style does your manager appear to be most of the time? And based on their style, what challenges do you think you will face? And the third thing, how do you need to adjust your approach and communication to build better rapport with them? If they send you a short email that's subject line only, nothing in the bottom, where are we on the report? Reply to the email the same way. We're on track, finished by Friday. Nothing in the body. That's how they sent it. You reply in the same way. Don't send them the 11-page bullet list. Now, if they send you the 11 bullet list, reply to each. Please see my responses next to yours below. And then next to each bullet, in a different font and a different color, you write your full sentence responses. But that's not how I am. No, but that's how your analytical manager is. So meet them where they are. Some people call that mirroring. All right. Think about your answers to that. Where are you most of the time? Where's your manager? And how do you need to adjust to have better rapport and communication with them? This might be a good opportunity to take a little break right now. Pause the video. When we come back, we will talk about good managing up. Welcome back. So I hope you're learning some good things. I hope I'm sparking some ideas in your head. And remember, nothing happens until something moves. So what are you going to do differently based on what you're learning here? When you consistently revisit these 3 keys to managing up, or the 6 keys that I mentioned to you, you place yourself in position to be your manager's trusted advisor. You'll know you're making progress when you see your manager coming to you and saying, hey, do you have a minute? I want to run something by you. Or, hey, I'd like your thoughts on this. Or, what do you think about XYZ? If they're coming to you for consultation or for thinking through projects, or, hey, will you help brainstorm this with me, or strategize this, or problem solve this with me? If they're coming to you for that kind of input and feedback, that's a sign that you're maintaining and updating a healthy working relationship. They're starting to view you as a trusted advisor. Now, if you're not seeing those activities, if they're not coming to you with those questions, ask yourself what you might need to do to adjust. Clarify expectations with your manager. You may be heading in the right direction, but you need a little more clarity on how best to communicate what they need and how you're fulfilling that need for them. So if you're not getting these questions, then maybe they don't even think that you could do that, right? So ask your manager, hey, what's going on? What's keeping you up at night? Is there anything I can do to help? I'm happy to be a sounding board. I'm happy to brainstorm ideas with you. Maybe they don't ask you because they don't know that you're open to that. So throw it out there. Have the conversation. Hybrid impact on managing up. As I said earlier, most of us left home and went to the office, and we did our office stuff. We did our work, and then we came back home. COVID threw a wrench into all of that. And for many of us, I know there were some people who still had to go to the lab or the factory or the warehouse or wherever you work because that's where the work was. But for many people who did not have that requirement of going to the hospital or going to the factory, you worked from home and you figured it out, right? And now that you've gotten to that routine, organizations are saying, well, come back to the office, 1 day, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever. I work with a lot of organizations and everybody's all over the place. They're trying different things. Some have settled on, we're going to be 100% remote. Some have said, we're going to try, 1 day a week in the office or as needed with your team. You discuss it with your teams. They give their managers greater flexibility in that regard. Some are like, hey, you have to come back 2 days a week or 3 days a week. They're trying different things. So what I would advise you to do, try different things. See what works. Maybe 3 days in is not good. Maybe your team doesn't like that. Maybe 2 days in, that's the sweet spot. Maybe come in when your team needs to collaborate or brainstorm on things. And when they don't, then it's all remote. I don't know. Don't get stuck in a thing, however. Try different things out. Give it a month or two, and then see if it works, then reevaluate. But working in this hybrid fashion, working with remote employees, has had an impact on managing up. Because one of the ways that many people built relationships with their managers and with their direct reports is through proximity. You'd walk down the hall and you'd bump into somebody. You'd say, "Oh, hey, so-and-so, good to see you. What's going on? Tell me about your projects. Tell me about your work," right? Remember those water cooler conversations, those break room conversations, those hallway conversations? Well, on the days when you're not in the office, you're not really having those conversations, are you? And nobody's rolling up at your house going, "Hey, can you come outside on the front porch and let's talk about your weekend?" Yeah, we're not doing that. And in many cases, if you are working from home a lot, your work is less visible to your manager. They're not seeing you working. Even if you came to the office and you weren't working, at least it looked like you were working because you were there. So they saw you there. I think this is a byproduct of an old mindset, a 20th century mindset, where you had to see people in the office, and that's how you knew they were working. There were people who came to work every day and weren't always productive, right? I think we have to get out of this idea of paying people for presence and presence equals productivity to paying people for productivity. Have you been more productive working from home during these last couple of years or so of the pandemic? If so, you know that working from home works. You know that you can be productive there. You've set up a routine. You've figured out how to do it. Yes, it was challenging at first, but many people have figured that out. Okay, so now the organization wants you back in the office for some reason. What is that reason? What's the good business reason for having you come back in the office? Is it to make your work more visible to the manager? Is it to improve communication or enhance corporate company culture? Or are you just trying to justify these real estate investments? We paid for this big office building and nobody's in it. What's the good reason for having you in the office? Well, whether you're in the office or working remotely, the fact remains that you still need to make your work visible to your manager. This is where you have to have regular one-on-ones, regular checkpoints with your manager and say, "Here's what I'm working on. Here's what I got done. Here's what I still need to do." The conversation needs to be around performance and metrics versus proximity and presence. Am I making sense? We have to shift our thinking in this. Generally speaking, if you're an office worker, I don't really care where you work from. You can work from your home. You could work from a coffee shop, a library. I don't really care where you work from. I do care that you work, and I care that you get the things done that you agreed to do. That's what my focus has to be. Would it be great to be in the office every day? Yeah, no. Maybe some days. And that's where we are with hybrid, right? So you have to decide with your team when those days are. But you still need to see the work. You still need to see proof of work. So this is where you have to inspect what you expect and have a regular way of monitoring what people do or reporting on their progress and showing you their work. You have to have more varied communication because you don't get those water cooler hallway conversations. Maybe you do when you're in the office, but if you're not in the office, then how do you do that? How do you communicate? The American Management Association did a study and they said that about 70% of communication in workplaces is informal. Those water cooler, hallway, coffee pot, break room conversations. That was most of our communication. So if we're not in the office, how do we communicate? You got to get past the idea of, oh, they're working from home. I don't want to call them or bother them at home. If they are working during established work hours and they happen to be working remotely that day, you pick up the phone and call them. Or you use Teams, or you ping someone, you send them an instant message or a chat, or you do a video conference with them. We live in an amazing age where there's no shortage of ways of communicating with each other. We just have to be intentional about it, right? Contact must be intentional. Communication must be intentional, especially in this hybrid world. You'll have to figure out the time zones if you have team members that, work across, different parts of the country or different parts of the world. And if people are working in different locations, maybe in different office buildings or different plants, right? Maybe you have a big organization with a large campus and they're in the north building or the south building. You'll probably still be doing remote meetings, even if people are working in the office that day. So you'll still be using technology to communicate with people and to connect, right? So think about some different ways that you can be more clear and deliberate about your communication, how you present yourself, and your work for the best visibility and feedback from your manager. This is why having regular weekly feedback meetings, not just to go through the to-do list, but to give you feedback and for them to receive feedback from you on how the relationship is going, how work is going. Those are critical. There's the old saying, out of sight, out of mind. If you're working in the office and you need to collaborate with someone, you're like, oh, I need to reach out to so-and-so. Oh, you look around and they're not here. If you don't see them, you may not think about how to connect with them. Oh, they're working from home today. I can't really call them. What stone is that chiseled into? You absolutely can call them, right? Ping them on instant messaging or Slack or Teams or whatever technology tools you're using for communication, right? Pick up the phone and call them. Send them a text message. Hey, so-and-so, it's a quick question here. I need to, pick your brain about XYZ. We have to go from out of sight, out of mind thinking to out of sight, first in mind thinking. If I'm working in the office and I don't see somebody here, it's like, oh, I need to collaborate with so-and-so. I need to pick somebody's brain. I need to do a brainstorming session with somebody. But that means I have to call them. Oh, call them. Don't be lazy. Or set up a video conference with them, Teams or Zoom or WebEx or Adobe Connect or whatever you're using, right? Set it up, because what's important is that you talk to that person. You get their ideas, right? You brainstorm, you collaborate with them, right? That's what's important. And we have the technology to do that. If you don't have the technology to do that, talk to your senior leaders in your IT department about getting the technology to do that. But this is not just a blip, folks. This is where we are. This is the future of work. The future of work is hybrid. We were headed this way before COVID. There was one study that I saw that said, I don't remember if it was Gallup or McKinsey or PricewaterhouseCoopers, that said about 25 to 30% of the workforce was headed to hybrid or full remote working by 2025 or 2030. We were already headed this way. COVID just moved up the timetable on everybody. And now we're doing hybrid. So this is not a momentary blip, as I said. This is the new normal. Well, can we go back to the way that we've always done? No. The genie's out of that bottle. That's not where we're headed. And if you try to force employees to go back to the office 100% full time, you think you have turnover issues now, you're only asking for more turnover. There was an article I was reading from Indeed, the big jobs board people, right? You can post your resumes, you can post job openings, right? The employment website. They were saying how they were noticing that a significant number of job applicants, I think it was something like at least 25 to maybe as many as 50% recently, of job applicants said they will not consider working for any company, any organization that does not offer remote or hybrid work opportunities. Folks have figured out work-life balance, and it does not include a 2 or 3 or 4 hour commute every day, especially when you go to the office to use what? A phone, a computer, and the internet? Unless you work in a hospital or a manufacturing plant or a lab, if you can do what you need to get done every day at home because you have all the tools you need at home, why am I sitting in a car for 2 to 4 hours a day, burning up valuable energy and time, not to mention expensive gas? So we need to think out of sight, first in mind, and leverage the power of technology to communicate and connect with each other. Is it the same as being in person? No. But this is where we are. So set aside a day where you and your whole team can come in, because you're going to use that time for collaboration or strategizing or problem solving or brainstorming, and you find it better to do that in person with a team, assuming you can do that safely and assuage people's fears about COVID. We are still, as of this date, June 27, 2022, in a pandemic. We still have the Omicron variant of COVID, which is more contagious. So if people aren't vaccinated, if people aren't wearing masks, you are only increasing people's discomfort at coming into the office place. You have to make safety a priority. So how has hybrid or remote work affected your relationship with your manager? What's been enhanced? What's been negatively affected? What changes have you noticed? And at this point, we would go into breakout sessions where we would share best practices that have worked for you and your team. So what I would encourage you to do is have a conversation with your team. What are some best practices? Hop on your LinkedIn and talk to some of your friends and colleagues that work in other organizations and ask them, hey, what are you all doing? What are some best practices you've done around hybrid work? Put a post out on LinkedIn and see how many people respond to it. Ask people for best practices. They probably have already done that, so maybe you just have to go do a search, right? But talk to your team. What are some things that you should continue doing because they've worked, and what are some things that maybe you should rethink? Here are some best hybrid work practices. You got to establish feedback norms for when, how, and what you'll communicate. There are many other practices. These are just a few. So to mitigate the effects of working in a hybrid environment, hybridity, as they call it, you got to establish some structure, some norms around when you're going to communicate, how you'll communicate, and what you will communicate with your manager and with your team. You have to set regular, predictable cadences with clear expectations to help reduce the gaps left by working in different spaces. Weekly meetings as a team, weekly one-on-ones with your manager to go through what needs to get done, weekly check-in with your manager just to give and receive feedback, not necessarily go through the to-do list. Create these new norms using these questions in a conversation with your manager. How often and in what way should we be meeting? You and your manager have this conversation, you come up with an agreement, you work it out. Well, let's meet weekly for this amount of time. We will do this in person, or we will do this on Zoom or Teams or whatever. If you are going to meet remotely, I highly recommend that you do this on a video and you turn the cameras on. There's so much more information that you get by being able to see people's facial expressions and body language than you get if you can't see each other. Turn the cameras on. We need to see each other. What is our meeting agenda for each session? What are we going to talk about? Maybe there's some regular action items that you need to talk about, but then there's some space to talk about new business, as it were. What documentation do you need to see from me, and what will I receive from you? So is there a weekly status report that you have to bring to your meeting with your manager? Is there something that you need them to share with you, right? So what is that information? And finally, what tools should you be using to report your progress on whatever you're working on? Does your manager want a weekly email when you're not meeting to discuss this? Do they need a midweek check-in from you? Is that an email, a text message? Is that a voicemail? How do you need to report your progress when you're not meeting in person? And how often should that be? In-person or video meeting at the beginning of the week, and a midweek email check-in or another video meeting? I don't know. Decide. Go have a conversation with your manager. So those are some things, some suggestions to help you establish feedback norms and maybe even improve communication and possibly even getting things done. Now let's take a look at the ABCs of meeting to manage up. So you work this out. You've got this on the calendar. Try to make this a regular meeting on the calendar, not one of those where, okay, I'll meet with my direct report once a week, but that meeting's always going to change to a different time and location. No. Same time, same day every week. You have to establish some consistency here, because if you think that that meeting is floatable and flexible, well, I can meet with my direct report, whenever I have time. You're not making that relationship a priority. You're not. So ask your manager, I need to meet with you same day, same time every week. I can't be a floater. Yes, you have this conversation respectfully. Don't, say what I just said the way I say it, but ask, hey, I'd like to meet with you at the same time every week, so that way we can plan our schedules accordingly and not get into the habit of having this be sort of loose and undefined. And then if you set it up that way, then your meeting is probably the first one that gets canceled or pushed and pushed and pushed. And that's not the kind of relationship you want to be in. Ever been in a personal relationship where no matter how busy you two got, you had date night? Friday night is date night. Saturday night is date night. Whatever date night was for you. Was that important for keeping a healthy relationship? Yeah, same thing here. Regular weekly cadence of meetings with your manager. Now, when you do this, here are the ABCs of meeting to manage up. Advanced preparation, body language, and finally, conversation. Advanced preparation. When you meet with your manager, this is an opportunity for you to make an investment in that relationship, to establish or strengthen your rapport with them, to establish trust, to establish visibility, to receive and to give feedback. So number one, advanced preparation. Don't show up to this meeting with your manager, this weekly meeting with your manager, and just wing it. Okay, what do you want to talk about today? No. Find out what they need from you and then prepare that. Walk in with an agenda. Walk in being ready and able to answer their questions and to meet whatever they said they needed from you. I need an update on the budget. I need an update on the lab results. I need an update on the clinical trials, whatever the thing is, right? Prepare for that. Find out what they need and prepare for that. Be thoughtful in the way that you approach them. This is your manager. They're very busy, right? They don't have a lot of time. So treat this time as important. Do not waste it. Have an agenda, stick to the agenda. If there's an ask, have your ask. Know what you want from them, right? Be succinct. Don't, I remember, when I was 4, they don't need the history of your life. Stay on point. Be thoughtful in how you approach them. Provide only relevant and actionable information. Especially if you're an analytical, remember that? Don't walk in there with everything plus the kitchen sink. They don't have time for that. Focus on just the essentials. Here's a little structure that may help you edit. With some managers, you have to edit down. With other managers, you have to edit out. Think of these 3 things. Number 1, jot them down. What is the TAM? What's the takeaway message? What's the most important thing you need to say or get across in this meeting with your manager? What is the TAM, the takeaway message? That could vary from week to week. That could vary based on what's going on, what projects you're working on. My meeting with my manager this week, the most important thing I need to get across to them is what? Pause the video, take 30 seconds and write that down. What is the most important thing you need to get across to your manager in your meeting with them this week? What is the takeaway message? I want them to know or remember this. Write it down. Welcome back. Here's the second thing. What is the TAA, the takeaway action? What do you want your manager to do? Do you have a specific ask? Hey, I'd like you to make a phone call. I'd like you to approve this. I'd like you to, fill this out or whatever. What do you need from them? What is your ask? The takeaway action. What do you want your manager to do? Pause the video, think 30 Take 30 seconds. Think about what you want your manager to do. Takeaway action. Go. Welcome back. Finally, what is the takeaway benefit? If your manager heeds the message that you give them, if they do the action that you're asking them to take, what's the benefit to them? How does their life get easier? What can you offer to take off of their plate to make their life easier? How do I make my manager look good? How do I make my manager's life a little easier? What is the takeaway benefit to them that I can offer in this meeting? That's what you need to think about. So that's advanced preparation. Another part of advanced preparation is knowing the ropes. Someone likes acronyms, right? So here's what knowing the ropes is in advanced preparation. Number one, what am I going to do to build rapport with my manager? Oh, I know they're a big sports fan. They're into hockey. So I'll ask them about hockey. Am I into hockey? No, but my manager is. And so I'll learn a little bit about that. Who's their favorite team and how well did they do in the Stanley Cup this year? Or does my manager like gardening? Or do they like music or movies? Or do they have cats? Do they have dogs? Oh, you've got dogs. They've got dogs. Talk about, hey, how are your dogs? Right? Mine, learned to sit this week. Yay. Whatever. Do something to build rapport with your manager. And it doesn't have to be around the work itself, right? What are you going to do to build rapport with your manager? That's the R. Number two. The O, what objectives need to be reviewed and what do you need to give progress reports on? You met with your manager last week. They asked you to give them an update on XYZ. Okay, do you have that prepared? Are you prepared to talk about those objectives and the progress you've made? That's the O. P, priorities. What priorities should we realign for shifting business needs? Do priorities change in your world? On Monday, it was this. On Tuesday, it was that. On Wednesday, it was something different. Do they shift that often? Do they shift from week to week or month to month? Whatever the priority is, you need to get clear with your manager about that. So on Monday, you meet, what's the priority for the week? Oh, this is the priority for the week. And remember, you can only have one. Everything's important, but only one thing is a priority. If the priority shifts, because your manager had a meeting with their manager on Tuesday, the priority is different now, your manager needs to know to circle back to you to let you know, oh, hey, by the way, just had a meeting with my manager and the priority has changed. It is this now. Okay, so then you update your workflow. You update, if you're a manager, you update your team and you get everybody to shift. You have to have clarity and communication and agreement and alignment about the priorities. No surprises. Number 4, execution. What do I need from my manager to help me execute on those priorities? Do you need information? Do you need approval? Do you need budget or tools? What do you need from them so that you can check off your to-do list and especially your priorities? And finally, the S, what is the strategy? How can I help my manager solve problems or innovate? And if your manager hasn't asked you for this help, remind them, hey, I can be a sounding board. I think I do critical thinking well, right? Solving problems all the time. Or you're one of those expressive types. So maybe you're very good at the creative process and you can help them come up with innovative ideas or solutions, right? But offer to help your manager solve problems. What do you do to work on the relationship? What do you do to review and give status reports on the objectives? What are the priorities? What do you need help? What do you need from your manager to execute everything? And finally, how can you help your manager strategize and solve problems? That's knowing the ropes, and all of that is a part of advanced preparation. So take a moment and think about this. Which one of these do you think, I really need to do more of that one? Is it clarity and alignment around priorities? Or is it strategizing? Is it relationship, rapport building? Which one of those do you think you need to do more of with your manager? Pause the video, take a note, make a note to yourself, and then what are you going to do differently in your next meeting with your manager? Welcome back. So we're talking about the ABCs of managing up, and we talked about advanced preparation and knowing the ropes. We're going to talk about the B now, and the B is body language. Let's say you've decided that you are going to meet in person with your direct report or with your manager in a safe way. You're both vaccinated and boosted and maybe wearing a mask, or you're in a space where you're not sitting right next to each other. If you are meeting face to face, then have an open body language to encourage cooperation. Don't sit there with your arms closed or turned to the side, right? Just open posture, right? Encourage cooperation. It says in person, sit around the corner from each other as opposed to opposites. Yeah, we're still in a pandemic, so you need to think about that social distancing space because you don't want to be breathing on each other, right? So you can sit on the same side, right, or across from each other, but have some space between each other. If you're meeting virtually, then mirror their on-screen scale. If they're sitting back a little bit, you sit back. If they're sitting forward a little bit, you sit forward, right? You want to have as similar a look as possible. And if you are meeting virtually, please, 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 for the love of all things effective, turn on the camera. Well, my hair, my background, stop it. We're 2 years into this. People need to see you. Imagine if you walked into the office, okay, and you were going to meet with your manager in person, and as soon as you walked in there, your manager just put up a screen. Would that be weird? Okay, thanks for coming today. I want to talk with you about the priorities. And this would be considered rude. So if you wouldn't do it in person, don't do it on camera. Turn your cameras on. Depending on what tools you're using, whether it's Zoom or Teams, you can blur your background. You can put up a virtual background, right? I've seen all kinds of colorful, creative virtual backgrounds. So get past that. We need to see each other. We need to see each other. That helps build connection and rapport. That's a little bit about the body language. Here's the C of the ABCs of meeting with your manager. This is a conversation. Don't view this as I'm going to go in there and they're going to tell me stuff to do and I'm just going to say yes and then leave. No, this is a conversation. So use curiosity to build soft power. Ask them questions. Hey, what's going on? What's important? What's keeping you up at night? How could I be more effective? What do you need more of or less of from me? Right? How's your kids? How's the dog? How's the cat? Right? Be curious. Ask questions. Listen so well that you can summarize and reflect on what they've said versus only listening for an opening for you to say what you're going to say next. Don't think about what you're going to say next. Listen to them. Be focused. Be intentional in your listening. When you do that and they're done, ask if you can summarize. Hey, let me see if I understand what you're saying. What you're asking me is ABC. Is that correct? Do I understand that correctly? Okay, super, right? If they say, oh, no, it's not ABC, it's ADE. Oh, ADE. Okay, let's clarify that. You ever have a meeting with your manager and they told you to do something and they said, you got it? And you said, yeah, I got it. And you left the room. As soon as you left the room, you thought, I don't got it. I do not got it. I do not understand. I'm missing something. Oh, now what do? You go back in there, admit that you weren't listening or you didn't understand? Most people probably wouldn't. You'd just struggle through that. And you'd spend time, money, and resources doing a thing that you did not fully understand. And now you set your boss up for disappointment in you, and you set yourself up for damaging the relationship. So write this down. Here's one question you have to get really good at asking in every conversation with your manager. Ready? Here it is. What does success look like to you? What does success look like to you? You're asking me to do this task. What does a successful outcome of this task look like to you? Time, money, quality. What does successful outcome look like to you? And they may not know what that is. So you may have to say, okay, well, let me mock up a prototype, or let me do a rough draft of it, or whatever the situation might be. And then we'll get back together and you tell me if that's close. And if you send them a rough draft, that might get them going. Okay, yeah, this is like 80% good. Take this out, add a thing on this, and modify that a little bit. Right? So you may have to do that because they may not have clarity about what success looks like. Help your manager help you. Discuss performance in a way that meets your manager's needs. What do they need more of or less of from you? It's a conversation. It's a back and forth, right? Don't just view this as an opportunity for them to tell you things and you nod yes agreeingly and you leave. So those are the ABCs of meeting to manage up: advanced preparation, body language, and conversation. So what are you already doing from that list, from what I've talked about? Give yourselves credit for that. And maybe there's something that I said that sounds like a pretty good idea. Let me start doing that. So take a moment, pause the video, jot down at least 2 actions that you'll implement with your manager. And when we come back, we'll talk about empathy and curiosity. Welcome back. I hope you're learning. I hope you're pausing, taking good notes, you're reflecting. Again, if we were doing this live, we'd have breakouts, we'd have conversations. I'd be asking you, you'd be sharing, other people would be sharing, we'd be learning from each other. And I hope you're getting a lot from this video. So let's talk about empathy and curiosity. What is empathy? What is curiosity? This comes from the work of Edgar Schein, former MIT Sloan School of Management professor. He's made major contributions in the field of organizational development, particularly with regard to understanding organizational culture. And the concepts include things like humble inquiry, leadership, and consulting. So if you were to boil everything down that we've covered so far, they're all examples of empathy and curiosity. Think about it. Remembering to bring your empathy to conversations with your manager. Remembering to bring your curiosity to conversations with your manager, every interaction with your manager, to your direct reports or to your colleagues. This will set you up for creating a strong or stronger relationship. It helps in the following ways. Number one, if you're curious, if you're asking questions, it will help you gain perspective. And when it comes to the 3 keys to managing up, it will help you know your manager and it will help you see things through their eyes. For the ABCs of meeting to manage up, helps with advanced preparation, your body language and behaviors, and in your conversation. So it's not uncommon to hear people talk about the importance of empathy these days. Brene Brown has a great video on what is empathy and what does it look like. And what we're saying is that empathy alone is just not as powerful as empathy plus curiosity. Curiosity is great by itself. Empathy is great by itself. But when you put those 2 together, it's like Wonder Twin powers activate. Form of empathy, shape of curiosity, boom! And then you have something really quite amazing. How many of you have a really good relationship with someone? Could be a work colleague, could be somebody personal to you. Is there empathy in that relationship? Is that one of the things that makes it so good? Do they really care about you in a genuine way? Is there curiosity? Are they genuinely interested in you and your well-being? If you have empathy and curiosity in those really healthy relationships, either work or personal, you know those are strong relationships or getting stronger. And that's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking to create in relationships with your manager in terms of managing up. And these are 2 hallmarks, 2 cornerstones of that, empathy and curiosity. Empathy is more than just understanding people's feelings, however. It's also about remaining curious rather than judgmental. Well, how does that feel for you? How does that look for you? What's going on for you right now? It's about being curious about their situation or their position. You don't have to share their perspective necessarily, but it certainly helps. But if you remain curious about it, even though you haven't had that experience, you can better relate to them. Maybe they'll say something that you can relate to. Okay, well, I haven't had that exact experience, but I've had something similar, so you can relate to where they are. And that is the basis of empathy. When we understand, when we ask questions, we're curious, we understand how somebody has wound up in their position, we can better address the needs that they have and how we might be able to help meet those needs. This kind of perspective taking and collaboration is what helps make you a trusted advisor. Bill Nye, the science guy, have you heard of him? He says, everyone you will ever meet knows something that you don't. So taking the kind of interest and gaining this kind of insight will help make you a trusted advisor. But you have to be curious enough to ask them, and you have to be vulnerable enough to realize you don't know everything. And you have to be open to changing your mind. Being empathetic and curious can also help you navigate difficult situations, which is our last topic. So empathy and curiosity help you gain perspective. So last thing, let's talk about navigating difficult situations. Not everything is going to be rainbows and sunshine and roses and unicorns, right? We are going to have challenges. We've had challenges the last couple of years. We've had challenges even before the pandemic and COVID. So speaking with our manager's interest in mind comes directly from the 3 keys for managing up that we discussed earlier. And we'll have some idea of their perspective going into whatever that difficult situation is. Handling difficult situations in a hybrid workspace, though, requires some extra attention to be emotionally intelligent. And if you haven't taken that class or read that book, Emotional Intelligence, do that. We don't have the stop-bys or the water cooler check-ins, those moments to smooth over conversations that may go off track a little bit. So we need to be especially aware of how we handle these conversations. So remember, the goal of managing up is about supporting our managers and supporting our careers and work environment by becoming our manager's trusted advisor. So we need to exercise empathy and curiosity in difficult situations. And that will help us build the relationships where we can be trusted and help them navigate these challenging situations. So here's some suggestions. When you're having one of these difficult situations with your manager or with your team and your manager is trying to, sort all of this out, it may be helpful for you to not only be curious and ask questions, but change your mindset. Most of us look at life through a set of lenses. I'm speaking metaphorically here, right? We look through our set of lenses, which were developed over time based on our experiences, what we've learned, who we've been around, or who's been influential in our lives, etc. But not everybody on the planet has the same set of lenses through which we perceive reality. You see a situation this way, your manager sees a situation a different way. How you see it is your mindset. How they see it is a reflection of their mindset. In order for you to be in alignment with them, you may have to let go, if only temporarily, of how you see this situation and look at it from their perspective. This is part of empathy, perspective taking, right? You're looking at a situation from the perspective, the mindset of an individual contributor. Your manager may be looking at this through the mindset or perspective of a manager in the organization with different responsibilities and priorities. You see things from your level of understanding, but maybe they are privy to more information than you are. They have more pieces of the puzzle to consider, and you lack those puzzle pieces. So this is why being curious and asking your manager, well, what is it that you know that I don't know? What is it that I don't understand about this? And if they trust you, they may let you in on some of that, right? But just keep in mind that you'll probably never have access to as much information as your manager does. So how you're seeing things is probably not the full picture. Be willing to change your mindset. Number 2, if things start to get heated, breathe. Breathe. What's going on when you get excited about something? What? How dare they? I can't. First thing, be quiet. Just stop talking. That's usually going to get you into trouble. When you get upset about something, just shh, be quiet. And then breathe. Because usually what happens when we get quiet or when we get agitated about something is this thing called the amygdala hijack. There's this part of our brain, the limbic area that handles emotions, sort of the emotional center of the brain. And then there's this thing called the amygdala. So when we get, triggered by something, oh my gosh, we have an emotional reaction. The logical part of our brain stops functioning. It shuts down. And so how do we think clearly through problems, through difficult situations? We have to re-engage that logical portion of our brain. How do we do that? Stop talking because you're only talking from an emotional place. Breathe, and while you breathe in your head, just start counting. You don't have to count out loud, just start counting in your head, because counting is a different part of your brain than yelling or cursing at someone. It's not your emotional part of your brain that does reason and logic and counting. And that's the part you need to re-engage. So breathe and count. When a difficult situation comes up, your manager may want to talk to you about this. Plan the topics, but don't script it. You want to be open to a fluid situation where different ideas about resolution may come up, and it's hard to embrace different ideas if you're stuck on, well, I have a script where I was only going to say this. Be in the moment. Be in the moment. Acknowledge their perspective, even if you don't agree with each other. It's like, oh, I see it this way. It tastes great. And they're like, well, no, it's less filling. If you're of a certain age, you'll get that reference. If not, it was about a beer commercial. It tastes great. It's less filling. Two people were arguing about the merits of their beverage. Some people were touting its taste. Some people were touting that it has fewer calories, and so it's less filling. So, okay, what's a thing that we can both agree on? We like this beer. Okay, great. Let's just focus on that. Right? But to get to that place of agreement on something, you may have to first acknowledge their perspective. Yes, I understand that you believe that this tastes great. I agree with you. I think it tastes great too. Oh, you agree with me? Yes, it tastes great. And I also find that it's less filling is an appealing characteristic too. Because you agreed with them, they may be more willing to agree with you. Well, yes, I can see how less filling would have its advantages. Okay, so how about you and I meet in the middle and say, we like this beer and it's got at least two great advantages. Well, okay. You want to look for win-win, not win-lose. Sometimes what makes a difficult situation difficult is we're in competition. Somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. And I think that's part of one of the biggest challenges that we face today is somebody's trying to win and someone's trying to lose. It's a zero-sum game. What if we could all win? What if our intention for every negotiation, for every potentially difficult situation or conversation was, what if we could both win here? What would that look like? You want to be compassionate because maybe this difficult situation is really difficult for them. Or maybe they've got a lot of other things on their plate that you don't know about. And what they really need from you right now is more listening and understanding than you digging your heels in and trying to advance a position. Somebody once said, be kind because everyone is fighting a hard battle. So be compassionate. Slow down and listen. Sometimes when we get into difficult situations or conversations, we just want to speed through there and get our points heard because we want to be heard. I get that. I have that too sometimes. What I'm trying to stay mindful of is the importance of being a good listener, because I can't offer good solutions if I don't know where you're coming from or what the situation is or what all the facts are to be able to accurately identify the problem we're trying to navigate through. Give something back. Instead of going into the conversation wanting to get all your needs met, what can you give? What can you let go of that might help move the conversation along? Where could you compromise if necessary? Give something back. And finally, reflect and learn. Where have we had difficult situations like this before? What did we learn from them? And how might those lessons allow us to navigate this difficult situation more effectively? Right? If we always have, difficult situations, we never reflect on them, if we never look for the lessons in them, chances are we'll probably just keep repeating them, right? Why does my hand keep hurting when I bang it with a hammer? Well, maybe you didn't learn the lesson last time of stop banging your hand with a hammer. Right? What's insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result? Stop that. Right? Look for the lessons, learn the lessons, and act accordingly. So those are some important tips and tricks and strategies for managing up, especially in a hybrid workplace. So what's the most impactful thing that don't hit stop on the video yet. Let me finish up. What's the most impactful thing that you learned today? Which one of the things that we talked about do you feel like, yeah, I could implement that and start to improve? Remember, folks, this is crock pot. It's not microwave. You're working at building relationships. This will take time. Don't expect to do something and have an instant result, right? You got to try something, see how it works. If you get good results, then keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And over time, you're able to manage up more effectively, right? So what's the most impactful thing you learned today that you can start with? And then when and how might you use that in the next day or two? Don't put this off. Well, next month I'll try the, no. While it's still fresh in your mind, while it's still fresh in your being, pick one of these strategies or tools and start using that. Now, notice that the moment you start doing this, your manager may react differently to you because they're not used to you doing this, right? So just say, hey, that class that you sent me to? This is one of the tips I learned. Oh, okay, very nice, right? You are learning. So here are the key takeaways. Know your manager, do your job, add value, see things through the manager's eyes. Remember the ABCs of meeting to manage up: advanced preparation, your body language, and it's a conversation. Remember the ropes to plan an agenda during your advanced preparation. And then remember to share your performance in terms of innovation, impact, and value to your manager. So what should you do? Work through key number 1 to think about how well you know your manager. Use ropes to plan a one-on-one meeting with your manager. And then describe your recent work progress in terms that are important to your manager. And that can help increase your visibility. Before you turn this off, if you want some additional content, if you found this to be of value, come see us at offsitebylernit.com. This is a learning community of over 5,000 professionals worldwide. It's a great opportunity to network with people and to learn some new skills. We usually have an offsite program every Wednesday, which is an abbreviated one, about half an hour. It's an amuse-bouche of learning. You pop in, there's like 10 or 15 minutes of content, and then 15, 20 minutes of Q&A with an expert in that area. On Fridays, we have an offsite program that's an hour, where an expert will come in and talk for about 45, 50 minutes or so on a specific topic, and then you have a chance to do Q&A. And it's all free. Just go to offsitebylernit.com, sign up, join the community, and you can even ask questions after the offsite presentations. It's a way to keep the learning going. I'm James Jeffley. Thank you so much for attending this presentation on managing up in a hybrid workplace, and I hope to see you in a future program. Until next time, all the best.